so much for being here and talking to us about art and investment and art trends. And ladies and gentlemen, you know, art is, back in the day, art and design, there used to be no kind of differentiation between, people used to think an art and design is one and the same. Of course, over the years, it's evolved, and now art is a separate subject, design is a separate subject. But obviously, there are similarities and blurring of lines. We will be talking to Mr. Siddanth about what is happening in the world of art. So let's start. Could you give us a little bit of an overview of the global art market versus the Indian art market? What is happening? How are people investing? What are the artists that they look to invest in?
This is Siddanth here. So I sort of work for AstaGuru, as I was introduced, and so
it's an auction house.
Yes. So AstaGuru is an auction house, and we deal in fine art and collectibles. That's where we focus upon. And as Josana was saying, you know, art and design has always gone together, and they still do.
Yeah.
It's just that art in itself today is quite an industry.
Yeah.
As you were mentioning about the art world globally, you know, at a global level, the art market today stands roughly around $65 billion. I mean, that's quite a significant number.
Yeah.
But it's matured over quite a few years. You know, and one of the major things that you have to understand is currently, even through a very volatile global market, I mean, politically, economically, a lot of economies are not doing well. You can take UK, you could take Europe for that matter,
yeah.
or US. But it still remains stable to the pre-pandemic levels. So it's always, you know, sort of remain stable even during the most roughest of those moments. And today, if you were to say who's the largest contributor from a market point of view for art, it would be US, which stands number one, followed by China. China had a dip last year. It was number 3. But this time it's gone up to number 2, which means number 2 has come down to number 3, which is UK.
Yeah.
But these are the major sort of industries that hold the global art market as such, what we call.
What about the Indian art market? The Indian art market, ladies and gentlemen, you must have heard about, you know, things like, say, the Indian Art Fair. And you've heard about AstaGuru, you've heard about Sotheby's, Christie's, and you must have heard your own friends and your own colleagues saying, we want to invest, and they're moving away from investing in, say, real estate or buying gold for investment. They're looking to invest in art. And even the younger lot now is looking to invest in art. So that's a very interesting sort of a trend that we're looking at in the art market.
Yeah, actually. So I'll give you a little backdrop about Indian art. You've got to understand is Indian art truly was recognized as an industry only as, you know, 3 decades back, just over 3 decades back. Somewhere in the 90s is when things really started to pick up. So you have to understand from a comparative point of view, when I'm looking at global art market to this, we are centuries away from them. Yet, no matter how nascent we are, we've started to really grow a lot faster right now. As you said, there are many factors that are sort of contributing to it. So if you were to talk about, you know, the new generation of, you know, people who want to really learn about art, cultural acquisition is starting to sort of really come on its own in India. To give you a good understanding is the Indian art market in the early 2000s were roughly around 13 crores. That's all it used to contribute. Today, the contribution of the auction houses from a sales point of view stands roughly around 1,200 crores.
Wow.
So that's how it's sort of grown.
Yeah.
You know, we can always discuss about art as an investment, but I always say art is a passion-based investment. One of the things is that if you're not happy with what you have on your wall, no matter how good of an investment it is, it's never going to be a good return for you. So you need to know what you need to invest into. And that's where, you know, auction houses, galleries really help you to sort of build that kind of an, you know, collection that you would really
also
want.
Art is a long-term investment, isn't it? So, I mean, when you're going into it as a, say, a young collector, it's better to have a long-term view and invest in whether you want to invest in modern art or contemporary art. But it's never going to be like, don't go into it with a view of 2 years or 5 years or something like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. So art is always a long-term investment because depending on, so of course, over the years, auction houses have built in a lot of data, which helps them to understand where the artist is currently and what kind of prediction path that we can sort of look into.
Yeah.
But it's not science as such. There is a level of judgment that comes in. But we know certain things over time in a long term will always settle, and the cream always comes up. And hence art is always something that we say is a long-term investment, not something where you keep it maybe a couple of years and think you can liquidate and make many fold in that sense. But I always underline, it's very important to understand is you have to like art before you can start investing into it. And it's that conversation that's very important with people. It's to make them understand the art, understand the artist, because believe me, Indian art has a fantastic story. Some of the artists absolutely have, the rich, backdrop and their philosophy into how they've really sort of gotten into art is fantastic. So when you learn, you understand that, you relate to it, and then you understand why they are valued at the prices that they are valued.
So it's also an emotional sort of hook, let's say.
Absolutely. That's why I always call it. It's a passion investment.
It's a passion investment.
As long as you understand it, you know what you're putting money into and why you're putting it.
So can you tell our audience, you spoke about, okay, I'll come to that later, but when we're talking about art, investing in art, which are the top modern masters that people usually prefer? Could you tell our audiences?
Yeah, so it depends on the values. And I'll give you a good understanding when Jyotsna was talking about modern art. So Indian art is sort of categorized in 3 different manners. So there is the pre-modern, so you have the Raja Ravi Varmas and all those sort of things. They are the old masters, as we call them. Then you've got the modern Indian art, where you've got the Raza, you've got the Souzas, you've got the Gaitondes. So these are some of, and Hussain, of course, for sure. And these are some of the artists which are definitely, the cornerstone of your modern Indian art. Then you've got the new sort of breed of artists. You've got the Valaya Shindes, you've got Anju Dodia, Atul Dodia.
Yeah.
All those individuals, they make up the contemporary art market. So that's how they tend to sort of work. And if you were to say, who's the most sort of, it depends on which category you're going for. So if you're going for the Indian modern art, the names that I've just taken, when it comes to Ram Kumar, you talk about, individuals like Gaitonde, all those do very well. Hussain is a household name. So when you generally tend to enter into Indian art, that tends to be your first purchase is something, we've always noticed. But if you're talking about investment, it just depends on you knowing the artist well and then sort of getting into investing into it.
Yeah, so basically you're saying that if I wanted to invest in art, I should know the market, my artist, and then see how the growth trend would be and then invest.
Absolutely. You need to, more than the market, it's very important to understand the artist. If you understand the story and the arc of what the artwork that you're really taking.
Yeah.
See, even for an artist, there are certain genres, certain years are more expensive than the others. So that's always very important to understand. And why is where you have to invest your time and energy into understanding that part. As I said, companies like us are there to help you out through that entire process. But that's how you can get the best out of the scenario. So if you were to understand about Hussain and you say, why isn't Horse series any better than the others? Well, you need to understand the story behind it. And then it's, the most popular one you can always think about is the Horse series. But there are many series that he comes about. So it's about understanding what's the most important period for the artist and where they have really developed as an individual.
When you said collectibles, can you tell the audience a little bit about what you mean by collectibles?
So collectibles could be anything from watches, jewelry. There are also opulent items like so we do antique furnitures. So it could be chairs, vases. So ladros, laliques, all of those sort of things, and we sort of also deal with them. And surprisingly, I would say that one of the more the first places where a lot of HNIs tend to sort of invest quite a bit is in watches, and then it is followed by art. So these are the kind of places that people spend quite a bit of money. Roughly around 17% of their investable incomes is generally put in these sort of categories of items.
So tell me, what advice would you give a young collector or a person just starting out to invest? Like, should they go for collectibles or should they begin with, of course, it depends on their budget also and their spending power, but should they, you want to get into it, so should it be art, should it be modern art, contemporary art? What advice would you give a collector, young collector?
It's eventually boils down to your taste. It's always boiled down to your taste of what you really sort of, like. Because one of the things that I've always understood is there are a lot of people who like contemporary. So the younger crowd, when I say younger crowd, I'm thinking of, somewhere in the early 30s to around, the 40s are the individuals that tend to connect a lot better with the contemporary artist because they use different mediums, different way of expression, and hence it's a lot more sort of exciting
appealing,
for them. You've got the matured individuals who might be sort of starting late. This could be in their, sort of mid 40s and all. They tend to go for the masters. So depending on, of course, your budget, understanding the kind of artist that you connect to. One of the most important things is connect with the artist, understand their story, and then it becomes a lot easier for you to do it.
Yeah. So tell me, what are the future trends that we can see in the Indian art market?
So the thing is, the spends are definitely increasing.
Okay.
I can give you some stats. When you're looking at the previous year, 2023, we've seen 164 sort of records being broken for the prices of Indian art. And so you can see how it's sort of growing.
And these were, sorry to interrupt, but these records that were broken were for Gaitonde, Hussain, the modern masters?
It's all together, but I can tell you that if I have to roughly break them up, the contemporary would be around 60s, and then the rest is from the modern and from the old masters.
Okay.
So it's broken down into it. Old masters, somewhere around 17 of those, and the remaining is it's for the your modern Indian art. That's how the break is. So as I said, there's a lot of sort of towards people are understanding it, appreciating it. The demand is increasing. So naturally, there is a sense of acceleration over there. And in terms of the future as well, there's a lot of legacy building that is happening with a lot of HNI families now. Part of it is also acquiring art, opening up sort of private museums for people, and sort of pushing towards the cultural side of it, which means that there's a lot more investment into it. Then auction houses like us, galleries which are coming online, which are sort of helping people with the accessibility to these items, and the natural support from the government, which is sort of pushing towards art and culture, it's basically creating a foundation which is for a better future. So hence I'm well confident about how it is sort of growing. And I'll give you some numbers as well. Even during the COVID and pandemic period, the market grew by 23%. In the previous year, as I said, if I have to tell you the numbers from 2019 to now, the market's grown from 500 to, as I said, right now it's at around 1,200 last financial year.
So that's 1,200 crores.
Yes, correct.
That's the Indian art market.
That's just the Indian art market, which is, by the way, a small drop in the entire global art market for now.
That's fantastic. It's very heartening to see how artists are being appreciated and Indian art is doing so well. I think we've run out of time, but just one quick question I had. So when you spoke about, how auction houses and galleries and all that is online now, it's facilitating the buyer and, tell me, do you find that the buyers are buying easier online? Or would they still want to come into a gallery and look at the piece of art, speak to, say, an expert, and then...
So I can tell you from our own experience. So you have to understand is we are purely an online auction house. And if you were to see our growth story, it tells you that people are actually leaning a lot more towards the online thing. The moment the trust and you grow a goodwill in the market of providing the right items to the right individuals, their trust grows. The natural thing is with the e-commerce is already pushing individuals into a very online way of operating. The pandemic is practically just pushed them off the cliff now that everyone needs to have an online presence. There are times when we do an online auction where a client has not even seen the artwork apart from the digital version of it and has managed to bid. they're not even in the country, they are in corners of the country as well, and have still managed to bid for these particular things. So it's certainly not the case anymore, especially with the younger audience, but even with the older ones, they're now getting a lot more comfortable, and in fact, there's a growing trend towards the online way of buying things.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for taking out the time and being here with us. Does anybody have a question? I can, okay, one question. I'll allow one question. I'll give you the mic. Over here.
Namaste, Siddanth. Thanks for the wonderful insight on collectibles, and it was good to hear that. My question is that there's also growing interest in digital collectibles in the form of NFTs and non-fungible tokens. What's your view on that? Where is it going to go?
So I believe that they work very well in terms of record keeping, but from a digital sense, it's still a very gray area. I'm not sure of how that is going to grow. There was a spike in interest. We've had companies reach out to us. I think Christie's, in fact, had done an auction for that particular scenario. But to be very honest, we've always been on the very fence of it, because we think that's a very good, transparent way to keep records for ownership. And from a certification point of view, that would really be the future. I see it. But from a digital art point of view, I am not sure the tokenization is the right direction, but I might be certainly very wrong in the matter. But if you see the market right now, there was a nice bubble that came up, and then now all of a sudden there's just quietness out there, right? So, and the other major concern about when you talk about these fungible tokens, it's about the copyright. There's still a massive gray area of who really holds the copyright. So if the digital goes there, then what happens to the physical artwork which someone holds, and what happens to the rights over there, right? So because of those challenges, it's not really taking up. And to be very frank, I still am on the fence when it comes to that part of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right.